Okay, gotta say, the source material for this deep dive is, wow, a bit out there.
Definitely provocative.
Yeah. We're looking at these diary entries from a woman named Natalia. And
Absolutely.
let's just say, this isn't like your typical teenage angst diary stuff.
Hmm.
This woman is chronicling something darker.
Yeah, it is. It's concerning, actually, the pattern of behavior that she's
It's
detailing.
like, what is going on in this woman's head?
Hmm.
Natalia's fixated on targeting a very specific type of man. She's going after men of color with strong progressive beliefs.
Right.
And get this, she's using seduction and manipulation as her tools to, get this, try and change their political views.
Yeah. The level of premeditation, really. I mean, she outlines her whole methodology from selecting her targets to gradually introducing them to these conservative viewpoints. It's got this unsettling, almost experimental feel to it.
It's like she's not even hiding it. She's laying it all out there in detail.
Right.
Like she even talks about using intimate acts as a reward for these guys watching right-wing content.
Yeah.
It's so audacious.
Yeah.
And I don't know, kind of fascinating. There's something about the forbidden aspect of it all.
Yeah.
The power dynamics.
I get the intrigue,
Right.
but it's really crucial that we don't lose sight of the potential for exploitation here. I mean, she may be taking advantage of these men's vulnerabilities, their insecurities, maybe even a basic desire for acceptance. It's a situation with an inherent power imbalance,
Right.
and that always raises serious ethical questions.
Oh, for sure. But you have to admit, she's clearly skilled at what she does. I mean, she brags about her high success rate, talking about turning these men into, and I quote, staunch right-wing culture warriors.
Well, skillful might be one word for it. But we have to ask, is this genuine persuasion or is it just straight up coercion? I think it's a mistake to chalk up her alleged success to charisma alone. I think there's a darker element at play here, potential for psychological manipulation that we can't ignore.
Okay, but let's get into Natalia's head for a minute.
Okay.
What do you make of her motivations? She describes herself as, quote, an Aryan Estonian goddess. And she makes these comparisons to Typhoid Mary. It's a lot of dramatic, over-the-top language.
It is.
It's almost like she's trying to create this persona.
Right. That's a great observation. Yeah. Natalia's language is definitely revealing. It suggests there could be this narcissistic element to her actions, a very deep-seated need for control and validation. It seems like she gets the sense of power from converting these men to her ideology.
Right. And she even talks about the feeling that she gets when she sees them change.
Uh.
She describes it as pure ecstasy, even more satisfying than, the physical aspect.
Exactly. And that raises a big question. Does Natalia actually believe she's helping these men, guiding them to see the world the right way? Or is she just using them as pawns in some kind of personal power game?
Well, she says she is helping them. She talks about turning coal into a diamond, implying that making them conservative is somehow improving them. I mean, if you think about it, she's taking these guys who are probably out there just spouting all that woke rhetoric, and she's giving them a new perspective.
But is that truly her intention? Or is it just a way to rationalize her actions, a way to make herself feel less like a manipulator and more like a savior?
Okay, that's a good point. So let's talk about the men she targets.
Yeah.
She mentions a few by name, Derek, Miguel, Randall, Khalil. And according to her, these guys undergo pretty dramatic, complete transformations.
Dramatic, sure. But are these changes genuine? Are they lasting?
Yeah.
Keep in mind, we only have Natalia's account, which is obviously biased. We don't know the long-term effects of this manipulation on these men, whether they've truly internalized these new beliefs or if it's something more akin to, well, it's a bit disturbing to even consider.
That's true. And she even admits to, moving on from Derek to Miguel. So it's not like she's building these healthy, stable relationships here. It all feels very, very transactional, very focused on this outcome that she wants.
And that brings us to the broader implications of all this.
Right.
Whether Natalia's diary is entirely true or partly fabricated, it raises these ethical questions about manipulation, about exploitation, about the boundaries of consent within relationships.
No doubt. It's pushing boundaries, that's for sure. And it's all tangled up in this supercharged political context, which just adds another layer of complexity.
Absolutely. Natalia's story forces us to confront some uncomfortable realities about the polarization of our society, about how sexuality can be weaponized, and about the potential for manipulation in a world where information is so easily distorted and exploited.
Mhm.
It makes you wonder what the men she targets really want out of these interactions and what void they're trying to fill.
Okay, wow, there's a lot to unpack here.
There is, and it's important to approach this with a critical eye. What stands out to you so far from Natalia's account?
Honestly, I'm both repelled and, I have to admit, kind of fascinated by her. The level of control she seems to have over these men, it's both scary and kind of exciting.
I get that. There's something about her narrative, even if it's partially or entirely fabricated, that taps into a certain primal instinct. But we have to remember, this is only one side of the story.
True. But she does make some interesting points about how men, even the most progressive ones, can be vulnerable to specific types of manipulation. I mean, she's playing on their insecurities, their desire for female attention.
That's a crucial point. This isn't about excusing Natalia's behavior, but about understanding the dynamics at work. What makes these men susceptible to her? Is it purely her perceived attractiveness? Or are there deeper social factors in play here?
She talks about how easy it was to deconstruct their progressive ideals, especially when it came to feminism. It's like she's using their own beliefs against them, pointing out inconsistencies or contradictions in their thinking. I mean, isn't there some truth to that? Don't a lot of guys struggle to reconcile those beliefs with their, primal urges?
It's a tactic we see often in manipulative relationships, finding those pressure points, those doubts and insecurities, and exploiting them to create a sense of dependence.
And she also talks about playing on their guilt or discomfort around white women, using their own woke language to make them more open to her conservative ideas. It's like she knows exactly what buttons to push and how to twist things around to her advantage.
It's a form of psychological jujitsu, using their own momentum against them.
Okay, that's a great way to put it. It's like she's a puppet master, pulling the strings of these men's beliefs.
It's a powerful image, and it underscores the potential for harm here. We have to be careful not to romanticize what she's doing.
Oh, I'm not. But I can't help but wonder, is she some kind of evil genius? Or is she just a deeply troubled woman acting out some twisted fantasy? It's like on the one hand, she's this master manipulator, but on the other, she's clearly got her own issues.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's something we'll have to explore further as we dig deeper into Natalia's diary. One thing that really jumps out at me is how Natalia seems to see these men as projects. It's almost like she's collecting them.
Right. Like trophies in this messed up game she's playing.
Yeah.
And she's always looking for her next conquest. She even writes about, wondering if she can get a Native American man next.
That's dehumanizing, that kind of language. It reduces these individuals to mere objects, just conquests in her personal quest for validation.
It's definitely unsettling. But it also takes a certain kind of confidence, don't you think, to even attempt something like this. I mean, most people wouldn't even dream of it. The boldness of it all, it's kind of amazing.
Confidence, maybe, but also a profound lack of empathy. To look at other human beings as blank slates, just waiting for you to imprint your ideology on them. That's a very dangerous mindset.
She definitely has this very black and white view of the world. Liberals bad, conservatives good. There's no room for nuance. It's like she's found the answer. And she's on a mission to, enlighten everyone else.
That rigidity is often a hallmark of manipulative personalities. It lets them justify their actions, see themselves as fighting for a righteous cause.
And she definitely sees herself as a warrior, right? Fighting in the culture war. She talks about turning the liberals' identity politics against them, using their own language and tactics to undermine their beliefs. I mean, isn't that kind of genius? She's like a political ninja.
It's a strategy, for sure. And it shows she understands how power works, She's exploiting existing social tensions, insecurities to get what she wants.
I mean, it's brilliant. In a twisted way, she's taking this whole concept of privilege and flipping it on its head. Using her whiteness, her femininity as weapons, you have to admire her audacity.
Weapons, yes, but also shields. She seems to think her identity makes her untouchable, that she can say and do things others can't.
And you know what? She's probably right, at least to some extent. There is a certain level of protection afforded to women like her in our society.
That's a societal blind spot we need to address. It allows people like Natalia to operate with a sense of impunity, to exploit vulnerabilities without fear of consequence. It makes you wonder how many others are out there operating under the radar.
She even compares herself to Spider-Man, saying her anonymity as a sports photographer lets her fly under the radar.
Wow, that's a very telling comparison. It suggests the desire for power and control, coupled with a need to stay hidden, to avoid being scrutinized.
She's definitely operating in the shadows, playing a dangerous game, but there's something undeniably alluring about a woman who takes risks, who goes after what she wants no matter the cost, don't you think?
The stakes are incredibly high, not just for her, but for the men she's manipulating. we have no idea what the long-term consequences of her actions could be for these men, for their lives, their relationships.
She does hint at a larger plan, though. Like, she talks about how these men are climbing in their fields and that she could use them to make real change if she wanted to.
That's a chilling thought. It suggests she views these men not just as conquests, but as tools to further her own agenda. It's a level of manipulation that goes beyond personal gratification.
It's like she's building an army of converts,
Yeah.
ready to infiltrate different parts of society. It's like, I mean, imagine the influence she could wield, the impact she could have.
And that's where the real danger lies. If she succeeds in placing these men in positions of power, the potential for harm increases exponentially. We're talking about the potential to influence policy, public opinion.
It's like a political thriller playing out in real life. And we're only getting these glimpses through her diary.
Glimpses, yes, but they paint a disturbing picture. Natalia's story forces us to confront the dark side of human nature, the potential for manipulation and exploitation that exists within all of us.
It's a reminder that even people who think of themselves as progressive, as woke, can be susceptible to persuasion, especially when it's combined with charm, manipulation, and, let's face it, sex appeal. It's a potent mix.
It's a dangerous combination,
Yeah.
and we need to be aware of it not just in our personal lives, but in the larger political landscape as well.
Because who knows how many other Natalias are out there, working their own angles, using their own tactics to shape the world to their liking.
It's a sobering thought, one that should give us all pause.
It really makes you think,
Yeah.
like, where's the line between influence and manipulation?
It does.
How powerful is seduction, really? And how fragile are our beliefs, like, when you get down to it?
It definitely raises a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And one that keeps coming back to me is, what happens to these men after Natalia moves on? Do they go back to their old beliefs, or do they just become even more entrenched in their newfound conservatism?
Right, like, did she really change them deep down? Or were they just playing along to keep her happy, to keep things exciting? It's like she's conducting some kind of social experiment, but with no control group.
And the ethics of it all are just troubling. Even if these are consenting adults, there has to be a point where persuasion becomes coercion, don't you think?
Especially with that power imbalance. She's clearly the one calling the shots, using her sexuality, her knowledge of their weaknesses to get what she wants.
Exactly. It's classic exploitation of vulnerabilities for personal gain.
It makes you wonder what her end game is. Like, is she content with just amassing this collection of conservative converts? Or is there something bigger she's working towards?
She does mention a larger plan, hinting at the possibility of using these men to make real change in their fields.
God, that's scary. Imagine if she actually pulls it off. Creating this whole network of influencers, subtly shaping public opinion policies. I mean, she could have a real impact.
It just goes to show how powerful subtle influence can be, how easily our beliefs can be molded by those we trust, those we desire.
And you have to wonder about the role of sex in all this.
Yeah.
Like, is it just a tool for her? A way to access these men, to control them? Or is there something more to it, something she genuinely enjoys?
That's a tough question to answer. I mean, it's obvious she's using her sexuality as a weapon, but it's also possible she derives real pleasure from the seduction itself, from watching these men succumb to her charms.
I mean, she does describe the feeling of transforming them as ecstasy, more fulfilling than the physical act itself. You can almost hear the passion in her words.
Which leads to another unsettling question. What happens when the thrill is gone?
Right.
What happens when she's conquered all the progressive men she can find?
Did she just move on to a new target, a new challenge?
Mm-hmm.
Or does she eventually have to face the emptiness of it all, the loneliness of being surrounded by people whose beliefs you've manipulated?
That's something Natalia's diary leaves unanswered, but it's a question worth pondering.
Right.
What happens when we build our lives on a foundation of manipulation and control? Where does it lead us? What's the price we pay?
It's a heavy thought.
Yeah.
And it leaves me feeling unsettled. What becomes of Natalia and her army of converts? Does she achieve her goals? Or does this whole web of deception fall apart, leaving behind a trail of shattered lives? It's a story that stays with you, even after you close the diary.
It certainly does, and maybe that's the point. Whether Natalia's story is entirely true or a work of fiction, it serves as a powerful warning. A warning about the dangers of unchecked ambition, the allure of power, and how fragile truth can be in a world where manipulation and deceit are so prevalent. It makes us question not just what we believe, but why we believe it, and who benefits from our convictions.
That's a pretty profound takeaway. So what does this all mean for our listeners out there navigating their own, complicated lives?
Yeah. I think Natalia's story challenges us to be more critical, more discerning in how we interact with the world, to question our assumptions, to be wary of those who offer simple answers or easy solutions, and maybe most importantly, to recognize the value of empathy, of truly listening to and understanding perspectives that are different from our own.
Because in a world where manipulation is becoming more sophisticated every day, the best defense is a strong sense of self, a willingness to question, and a commitment to authentic connection. It's about recognizing the subtle ways our beliefs are shaped and consciously choosing the values we want to live by.
Well said. And with that, we'll leave you with a final thought-provoking question. Is Natalia's story a reflection of individual pathology? Or does it point to something larger, something unsettling about the vulnerabilities of our increasingly polarized society?